My sister smashed a cake in my face and called me a failure, so I stopped covering her expenses, and now she's pleading with me. Hey everyone! Before we get into today's video, I could really use your support. We've noticed the channel isn't doing as well lately, and one of the easiest ways you can help is by subscribing. It's quick, completely free, and makes a big difference in keeping us going with awesome content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's dive into the video. I suppose I should start from the beginning. For the last 5 years, I, a 32-year-old male, have basically functioned as my sister's personal ATM. Let's call her Zara. And I don't mean the occasional, "Can I borrow 20 bucks for gas?" situation. I mean full-on financial backing, her rent, utilities, groceries, her kids' clothing, school supplies, pretty much everything. I work in a factory that manufactures car parts. It's not fancy, but the pay is decent if you're willing to put in tons of overtime, which I've been doing almost non-stop since Zara's husband left. My social life? Non-existent. I haven't had a proper vacation since 2019. Most weekends, I'm either working extra hours or fixing something broken in Zara's apartment. It wasn't always like this. Zara used to be married to a guy I'll call Dylan. He was all right, had a steady job as an electrician. They seemed like a typical couple, had a child together, my niece Poppy, who's now 7 and actually a great kid. But Zara has always struggled with her temper. One moment she'd be fine, and the next she'd explode over the smallest thing. She'd have huge outbursts, screaming at Dylan over ridiculous stuff, like him getting the wrong brand of cereal or not replying to a text quickly enough. So, unsurprisingly, he eventually had enough and walked out when Poppy was around too. I still remember getting a late-night call from Zara, sobbing that Dylan was a selfish jerk who abandoned his family. Later, I learned he had been warning her for months that he was unhappy, but she didn't take him seriously. After they split, Zara couldn't afford her place anymore. Her retail job at the mall paid next to nothing, and childcare costs were outrageous. This is where my parents, Oscar and Vivian, should have stepped in, but of course they didn't. They've been living it up in retirement ever since Dad got his pension. They travel for months at a time and remodeled their home to include one of those high-end kitchens you see on TV. When I suggested they help Zara out financially, their daughter, Mom just smiled at me in that condescending way and said, "You're young and capable, Parker. You don't have any real obligations yet, but Zara needs help now." So, like an idiot, I agreed to support her until she got back on her feet. That was in 2020. Now it's 2025, and guess what? I'm still footing the bill. At first, I was just covering her rent. Then, it became rent and utilities because heating is pricey in winter. Then, groceries, because Poppy is growing and needs nutritious food. Then, clothes for Poppy, school supplies, extracurricular activities, a new laptop, because apparently, a first grader needs one for school. Then furniture, because the old stuff reminded her of Dylan. The list just kept growing. Whenever I suggested cutting back on spending, Zara would resort to one of her usual tactics. Sometimes she'd start crying about how hard it is to be a single mom. Other times she'd get defensive and accuse me of being stingy. Her favorite trick? Using Poppy as leverage. "So you want your niece to go without basic necessities?" She also loved reminding me how lucky I was to have no family of my own to take care of. Here's the thing about me. I've always been the family problem solver. Maybe it's middle child syndrome. I crack jokes when things get tense, try to keep the peace, and avoid confrontation. Every time I hand Zara money that I know I'll never see again, I just make some sarcastic comment. "Well, there goes my dream yacht." Or, "Guess I better win the lottery now." And everyone laughs. Situation diffused, but my wallet stays empty. I actually had goals once. I was saving for a down payment on a house, had around $15,000 set aside before Zara's crisis hit. That money, gone in the first year of helping her. I wanted to take classes at a community college to advance in my job or find something better. That's out of reach now. I even tried dating here and there, but it's tough to plan dates when you're counting every dollar after covering 2 sets of bills. My friend Kai keeps telling me I'm being taken advantage of. Dude, she's an adult. She should figure it out like everyone else. But it's not that easy when a kid is involved. Poppy didn't choose any of this, and I love that little girl. She's funny, bright, and loves drawing pictures of dinosaurs wearing hats for me. How do you say no when you know your niece might suffer? Uncle Wade is the only person in the family who truly sees through Zara's manipulation. At Thanksgiving last year, he pulled me aside and said, "Kid, you're setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, and they're still going to complain it's not hot enough." Wade has always been blunt like that. He even offered to loan me money once, but I refused. This situation is messy enough without adding another family member into the financial mix. About 8 months ago, Zara finally landed a solid job as an administrative assistant at an insurance company, full-time with benefits. I thought things might finally shift, that maybe I'd only need to help with Poppy's extras or cover part of the rent instead of all of it. But the money requests didn't stop. If anything, they increased. Starting a new job is expensive, she claimed. Suddenly, she needed professional outfits, networking lunches, and other things that suspiciously sounded like excuses to buy clothes and eat out. Meanwhile, I'm still driving my beat-up 2008 Honda with nearly 190,000 miles on it, shopping at discount grocery stores, and holding onto my phone until it literally stops working because I can't afford a new one. But I kept paying. Maybe because I'm a pushover. Maybe because after saying yes for so long, saying no feels impossible. Maybe because I worry about what will happen to Poppy if I pull the plug. Or maybe because, in my family, I'm Reliable Parker, the one who keeps everyone afloat with a grin and a joke. But after Zara started this new job, I began noticing strange things. Not all at once, but there were little things that just didn't add up. For starters, her financial struggles seemed to be getting worse rather than improving. Back when she was only working part-time at the mall, I kind of understood why she needed assistance. But now she had a full-time income. Not amazing, but definitely better than before. Yet she was still coming to me for money just as much, if not more. One week, she called in a panic, saying she couldn't afford rent because she had to cover Poppy's school pictures. School pictures cost around $50, but her rent was $1,200. How does that even make sense? Whenever I visited her place, I started noticing new things. Nothing extravagant, but definitely not budget-friendly either. New decorative pillows, high-end makeup sitting on her bathroom counter, even one of those robotic vacuums. Who buys a robot vacuum when they can't keep up with their electricity bill? The biggest red flag was when she turned up at our parents' house for Sunday dinner wearing designer shoes. I recognized the brand only because a girl I once dated was obsessed with them. They cost at least $300. When I raised an eyebrow, she just shrugged and said they were on sale. On sale for what? $250 instead of $300? Still outrageous when I'm over here buying my work boots from Walmart. Then she started acting weird with her phone. Before, she'd leave it lying around on the table, but suddenly she was keeping it on her at all times, even taking it with her to the bathroom. She also flinched whenever a notification popped up. One time, I walked into the room while she was texting, and she immediately flipped her phone over, like she was hiding top-secret government codes or something. Her schedule became strange, too. Before, she was always home in the evenings with Poppy, but suddenly, she needed me to babysit more often, usually last minute. "Work emergency," she'd say. Or, "Girls' night, I really need this for my mental health." And look, I get it. Everyone needs social time, especially a single parent. But it was happening 2 or 3 times a week. Then I started hearing things from Poppy that didn't match up with Zara's whole struggling single mom routine. One day, while picking her up from school, she excitedly told me about this restaurant where the chefs cook right in front of you, obviously a hibachi place. When I asked who took her, she said, "Mommy did last week." And I just sat there thinking, last week, I gave Zara grocery money because she told me they'd been eating ramen for dinner every night. But somehow, she had enough for hibachi? That's at least $60 or $70 for 2 people. Another time, Poppy was playing with my phone and accidentally opened my Amazon app. She saw a toy and blurted out, "I have that!" Mommy ordered it for my good grades. It was a $40 toy, not crazy expensive, but definitely not something a person who's behind on utility bills should be buying. I also started keeping an eye on her social media. She wasn't posting anything outright suspicious, but she kept tagging herself at fancy restaurants, a winery, a concert venue, always with a group of coworkers she'd never mentioned before. When I casually brought it up, like, "Hey, how was that Italian place you went to Tuesday?" she got defensive instantly. "Oh, so now you're stalking my Instagram? Wow, Parker, controlling much?" So, as usual, I backed off. That's just what I do. Crack a joke, smooth things over, act like everything's fine. Just making conversation, sis. Glad you're making friends at the new job. But the thought kept nagging at me. Where was all my money actually going? If she could afford nights out, hibachi dinners, and expensive shoes, why couldn't she pay her rent? Uncle Wade caught on too. One weekend, we were helping my dad repair his deck. Well, Wade and I were working while Dad supervised, and Wade just straight up asked, "You still financing Zara's life?" I mumbled some vague response like, "You know how it is. Family helps family." Wade just shook his head. "That girl is playing you, Parker. You don't see it because you don't want to, but everyone else does." That stung, because deep down I knew he was right. Even my best friend Kai had stopped inviting me out, tired of hearing I can't afford it, while watching me Venmo my sister hundreds of dollars. I tried bringing it up with my parents once. We were at their house for Dad's birthday, and Zara had just asked me for money the day before, an $800 car repair that I'm almost certain she made up. So, while I was alone in the kitchen with Mom, I asked, "Don't you think it's weird that Zara still needs so much help, even with her new job?" Mom just gave me that look, the one that says I'm being unreasonable. She's a single mother, Parker. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to raise a child? You're lucky you only have yourself to worry about. There it was again. I'm lucky to be stuck covering two households with one paycheck while everyone else lives their life freely. What really made me suspicious was when Zara started getting frequent package deliveries. I wouldn't have known about it if Poppy hadn't mentioned it. The delivery man comes to our house a lot now. Mommy says it's because she deserves nice things. Nice things? Meanwhile, I was debating whether I could afford to fix my car's AC or if I should just sweat through another summer. I still wasn't sure exactly what was going on. Part of me wondered if she had a shopping addiction, or maybe she was involved in something she wasn't telling me about. Either way, I needed answers. So, the next time she called last minute, asking me to babysit because of a work event, I agreed. Like always, I wasn't planning to snoop. That's not really my style. But when I showed up to watch Poppy, things felt off. First, Zara was way too dressed up for a work function on a Thursday night. She had on this tight black dress I'd never seen before, heavy makeup, her hair styled, and perfume that definitely wasn't the cheap body spray she used to get from the mall. When I made a comment about it, she immediately got defensive. Some of us actually care about our appearance, Parker. Not everyone wants to look like they just rolled out of bed. For the record, I was wearing jeans and a clean t-shirt. Not exactly just rolled out of bed, but whatever. The second thing was Poppy's reaction. She seemed confused about where her mom was going. When Zara said, "Mommy has to go to a work thing," Poppy tilted her head and asked, "Is Ritter going to be there?" Zara's face turned pale in an instant. Then suddenly she snapped, "Go brush your teeth right now." After practically shoving Poppy out of the room, she ushered me into the kitchen. "We need to talk about Poppy's bedtime routine," she said, avoiding eye contact. I'm not stupid. "Who's Ritter?" I asked. Her response was way too quick. "Just a coworker. We're all going to this team building event." She was lying. I've known Zara my entire life, and she has this habit. Whenever she lies, she fiddles with her earring. At this point, she was practically yanking on it. But I let it slide because Poppy had just walked back into the room, and I didn't want to stir up any drama in front of her. Zara rushed out the door, telling me not to wait up because these work events sometimes ran late. Once I got Poppy settled with a movie, I decided to take a look around. Not full-on searching through her stuff, just casually observing. I wasn't opening drawers or rifling through things, just noticing details. When I went to hang up Poppy's sweater in the hall closet, I saw a men's jacket hanging there, and not something unisex. It was clearly a men's leather jacket, extra large. Zara's ex, Dylan, was at best a medium. In the bathroom, I spotted men's body wash in the shower. Not the cheap kind either, but the pricey stuff that costs around 15 bucks a bottle. There was also a men's razor sitting on the counter, but the real proof was in the living room. While Poppy was getting into her pajamas, I noticed some mail on the coffee table. One of the envelopes was addressed to a Ryder Jennings, with Zara's apartment listed as the delivery address. That's not just some casual acquaintance or a coworker. That's someone who spends enough time there to get mail sent to the place. When Poppy came back to pick a movie, I casually asked, "Hey Pops, who's Ryder again? Is he one of Mommy's work friends?" She gave me that look only kids can pull off. That mix of exasperation and amusement like adults are completely clueless. "No, Uncle. Ryder is Mommy's boyfriend. He sleeps over a lot and makes pancakes in the morning." Well, there it was. My sister had a secret boyfriend, one who was apparently staying over regularly, receiving mail at her place, and even making breakfast. Trying to keep my tone casual, I asked, "Does Ryder ever buy you things?" "Sometimes," she answered, more focused on choosing a movie. "He got me the robot that cleans the floor, and he took me and Mommy to that place where they cook in front of you. He has a cool car too." So this guy was taking them out to expensive restaurants, buying gifts for my niece, and driving a cool car, while I was still covering Zara's rent and utility bills because she claimed she couldn't afford them. My stomach churned. For 5 years, I had been sacrificing everything to support my sister, believing she was struggling to get by. And now, she had a boyfriend who was spending money on her and Poppy, while I continued to cover all the essentials. The more Poppy talked, the worse it got. Apparently, Ryder had been around for at least 6 months. He had taken them to the zoo, right after Zara told me she couldn't afford Poppy's school field trip. He even brought them on a weekend getaway to a water park, the exact same weekend she had asked me for extra cash, claiming her work hours had been cut. I kept my cool for Poppy's sake. We watched the movie, I read her a bedtime story, and I tucked her in like everything was completely normal. But inside, I was furious. Once she was asleep, I started looking around more intentionally. In Zara's closet, I found shopping bags with receipts still inside. Designer clothes, expensive items, even an iPad. All of it had been purchased in the past few months. Meanwhile, I had been eating ramen every night to save money. In her nightstand drawer, I found brochures for weekend getaways and a handwritten card that said, "Happy 6 months, babe. Can't wait for many more. Love, R. 6 months." She had been with this guy for half a year while still taking my money. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures of everything. The men's stuff in the bathroom, the envelope with Ryder's name on it, the receipts, the card. I even snapped a picture of the guy's jacket. I wanted proof for when she inevitably tried to deny it all. Then I went through her Instagram. She hadn't posted any pictures with a man, but when I scrolled through her girls' night out photos, I started recognizing a familiar face. The same guy appeared in the background of multiple pictures, not tagged, but definitely there. In one, his hand was even on her waist. Subtle, Zara, real subtle. I was still sitting there, scrolling through her social media, when I heard her key turn in the door around midnight. Quickly, I put everything back in place and acted casual on the couch. She walked in, still dressed up, looking slightly tipsy, and clearly surprised to see me awake. "Oh, you're still here?" she asked. "How was Poppy?" "Great," I said, keeping my tone even. "We had a nice chat. She told me all about Ryder." The expression on her face, in that moment, was almost worth the thousands of dollars I'd wasted on her. She immediately went into denial mode. "He's just a friend," she insisted. Then she backtracked. "We've only been seeing each other for a few weeks." Finally, she admitted the truth. They had been together for over 6 months. But the worst part? The way she tried to justify lying to me. "You're so judgmental, Parker," she snapped. "I knew you'd make a big deal out of this." "A big deal?" I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. "You've been taking my money for so-called emergencies while spending it on dates with this guy. It's not like that," she argued. "Ryder's going through a rough patch financially right now. I've been helping him out sometimes." "That was when I completely lost it. So let me get this straight," I said, barely holding back my anger. "I work overtime every week so you can pay your bills. But instead, You're using that money to support a grown man who should be handling his own finances? That was when she started crying. Classic Zara. When logic fails, turn on the waterworks. She launched into an emotional monologue about how I just didn't understand, how Ryder was incredible with Poppy, how for the first time since Dylan left, she was actually happy. And somehow, in her mind, I was the bad guy for trying to ruin that for her. I wasn't having it. I'm done, I told her. No more money, no more bailouts, no more playing your personal ATM. Figure out how to pay your own bills like every other adult. Of course, she lashed out, called me every name in the book, selfish, heartless, jealous. That last one hit harder than I wanted to admit, maybe because there was some truth to it. It's tough to date when you're always working. Even harder when you're constantly broke from supporting your sister. I walked out of her apartment that night, thinking it was all finally over. I couldn't have been more wrong. The next morning, my parents called. Guess who had rung them up at 1 a.m., sobbing about how awful I was? They hit me with a long lecture about how family should always support each other and how I was being completely unreasonable. When I tried to bring up Ryder, they dismissed it instantly, like it was nothing. So she has a boyfriend. What's the big deal? She deserves some happiness after everything she's been through. Did everyone just forget that I had been through things too? That I had put my own life on hold for 5 years? For the next week, Zara bombarded me with texts about bills that were due. I ignored every single one. My parents kept calling, leaving guilt-ridden voicemails about how Poppy shouldn't suffer because I was being stubborn. I ignored those too. I was finally standing firm, and it actually felt good. Then Saturday came. I was at home, minding my own business, when the doorbell rang. Standing there was Zara, holding a fancy cake box. "Can I come in?" she asked, for once looking like she actually felt bad. Against my better judgment, I let her inside. She placed the cake on my kitchen table and launched into a clearly rehearsed speech about how she regretted not telling me about Ryder, how she understood why I was upset, and how maybe we could work something out. Maybe I could still help with rent, just until she got things in order. I stared at her in disbelief. "You really don't get it, do you?" I said. "This isn't just about your boyfriend. It's about the lying, the manipulation. Using me for 5 years while hiding what you were actually spending the money on. That's not fair," she shot back, already getting defensive. "I did need help with necessities." "Sure," I said. "But not for fancy dinners and gifts for your boyfriend. Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for you? I've been living like I'm broke, because I am broke. From giving you all my money," she muttered under her breath. "It wasn't all your money." "Don't exaggerate." I actually laughed. "Zara, I've given you over $35,000 in the last 5 years. I did the math. Her eyes widened. I don't think she had ever stopped to calculate the total. "Look," I continued, "I'm not even asking for the money back. It's gone, but I'm done. You have a job. You have a boyfriend. Figure it out, between the two of you." That's when she motioned toward the cake box. "I got your favorite, carrot cake. From that bakery you like, as a peace offering." I opened the box, and sure enough, there was a beautifully decorated carrot cake inside. But something about it seemed off. "What's this really for?" I asked. "You've never brought me cake to apologize before." She fiddled with her earring. "I just wanted to make things right. I noticed there was writing on the cake, partially hidden under the lid." I pulled it back completely and read, "Happy 6-month anniversary, R." The rest was smudged. It clicked instantly. "This is for Ryder, isn't it? Today is your 6-month anniversary with him." Her face turned bright red. "Well, yeah," she admitted. "But I thought we could share it." I was getting louder now. "Include me? You didn't even buy this for me. You bought it for your anniversary." "What? He canceled on you, so you thought you'd use it to butter me up instead?" She snapped. "Ryder didn't cancel. I'm meeting him later. I just thought—" "You thought you could smooth things over with me so I'd keep paying your bills," I interrupted. "Then go celebrate with him afterward, using my favorite cake, which I'm guessing you paid for with the money I gave you for your electric bill last month." "It's not like that," she yelled. "God, you're impossible. This is exactly why I didn't tell you about him. You're so judgmental and controlling. Controlling? I repeated, laughing bitterly. I've let you walk all over me for 5 years. I'm not controlling you. I'm just done being used by you. Fine, she screamed. Keep being a bitter, lonely loser. She snatched up her purse and stomped toward the door, then turned back and spat out. At least Ryder loves me, which is more than anyone can say about you. That stung, more than I wanted to admit. I took a slow breath and forced a cold smile. If Ryder loves you so much, I said evenly, then congratulations. You finally found someone else to be your ATM, though I'm guessing he doesn't realize that's his role yet. Maybe check if his credit score can handle the Zara tax before you get too attached. Her face twisted with rage. Before I could react, she grabbed the cake and smashed it right into my face. Carrot cake went everywhere, into my eyes, up my nose, down my shirt. The plate was heavy, and it hit hard enough to split my lip. Go to hell, Parker, she shrieked. You think you're so much better than everyone else? At least Ryder isn't some pathetic workaholic with no life. I just stood there, cake frosting dripping from my face, completely stunned. 29 years old, and my sister was throwing cake at me like a toddler having a meltdown. She stormed toward the door, but paused to throw one last jab at me. Don't expect to see Poppy again if this is how you're gonna be. That threat, using my niece as leverage, was the final straw. My voice was calm, dangerously calm. Get out! I wiped a chunk of frosting from my cheek. And don't come back until you're ready to act like an adult. She slammed the door behind her, and I just stood there in my kitchen, cake dripping onto the floor, wondering how my life had come to this. 5 years of sacrifice, and all I got was a cake to the face and a threat to keep me from my niece. I took a long shower, scrubbing frosting out of my hair, my ears, my shirt, and I made a decision. This wasn't over. If Zara wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. She had spent years taking advantage of my kindness. Now she was about to find out what happened when Parker finally reached his breaking point. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages from my parents. Zara had already called them, spinning her own version of events where I was the villain and she was the helpless victim. Again. This time, I didn't ignore them. I snapped a picture of my still red face, my split lip, and sent it to the family group chat with one message. This is what your daughter did when I told her I wouldn't pay her bills anymore. Dad's response. You know how emotional she gets. You shouldn't have pushed her buttons. Classic. Zara acted completely unhinged. Yet somehow, I was the bad guy for Chex Notes deciding not to pay her bills anymore. I tried once again to explain about her boyfriend, how she had been lying for months, splurging on shopping, fancy dinners, and trips. My parents' response? That's between her and her boyfriend. It was between her, her boyfriend, and me, the person financing everything. Uncle Wade was the only one who saw things clearly. The first thing he asked when he called was, "Are you pressing charges?" Obviously, I wasn't. She was still my sister, and I couldn't do that to Poppy. But the fact that someone finally acknowledged how messed up the whole situation was, that meant a lot. Meanwhile, Zara had launched a full-scale PR campaign against me. She told anyone who would listen that I had abandoned her and Poppy out of jealousy over her relationship. She even posted some vague nonsense on Facebook about toxic family members and finding out who really loves you. I could have walked away at this point, cut ties, licked my wounds, and focused on rebuilding my savings. But something inside me had shifted. I was done being the guy who took the hit for everyone else. A few days later, Uncle Wade took me to lunch. As we finished our burgers, he looked at me seriously. Have you thought about your next move? Because your sister isn't going to let this go. I shrugged. What can I do? The money's gone. Wade smirked. Maybe not. My buddy Marcus works in debt collection. The legal kind, not the scammy ones. You got records of everything you gave her? Every penny, I said. I've had a spreadsheet tracking it for years. 3 days later, I sat across from Marcus and slid a thick folder packed with statements, Venmo receipts, and screenshots across his desk. So, your sister claimed she needed rent money while spending $300 on shoes, Marcus said, flipping through the proof. And taking her secret boyfriend to expensive restaurants, I added. And you have messages where she outright admits these were loans? I pointed to a highlighted section. Zara. I swear I'll pay you back once I get on my feet. Me. You said that last month. Zara. I mean it this time. Marcus grinned. Perfect. I can work with this. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. 2 days later, the official notice was delivered to Zara's apartment. Total owed $39,427, including a reasonable amount of interest. Payment due immediately. Failure to respond would mean credit reporting, possible wage garnishment, and other legal action. It took about 18 minutes for my phone to ring. Are you freaking serious right now? Zara screeched so loudly that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Well, hello to you too, sis, I said. You sent a debt collector after me? You know what they say, I replied casually. When someone throws cake in your face, send a professional to collect what they owe you. Or something like that. This isn't funny. They're threatening my credit score. That's serious. Maybe you should ask Mom and Dad for help, I suggested. Or Ryder. He seems happy to finance your lifestyle. Unless, of course, he thought he was dating an independent woman and not someone who's been leeching off her brother for 5 years. The level of screaming that followed was impressive. I let her rant for about 30 seconds before cutting in. Look, it's simple. You borrowed money. You didn't pay it back. Now you owe a debt. Welcome to adulthood, Zara. Those weren't loans, she shrieked. That was family helping family. Funny, I said, because I've got about 50 texts that say otherwise. She hung up. I smiled and silenced my phone, knowing the family explosion was about to begin. And wow, did it not disappoint. My parents called 17 times within the hour. I finally picked up while making myself a sandwich. Have you completely lost your mind? Dad bellowed, skipping any kind of greeting. Hi, Dad, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. A debt collector? Against your own sister? Well, since she's allergic to personal responsibility, I figured I'd introduce her to professional responsibility. Mom cut in, voice trembling. Parker, you need to stop this immediately. Zara is devastated. So was I said calmly, when she smashed a cake in my face. When she spent the money I gave her for rent on her boyfriend. But please, tell me more about how I'm the bad guy here. This isn't the person we raised you to be, Dad said gravely. I laughed. Oh, so you did raise me to be a doormat. Must have missed that lesson. From there, the conversation spiraled. They cycled through guilt trips, empty threats, and appeals to family loyalty. You know what's funny? I finally said. I'm the only one who has ever held Zara accountable for anything. Maybe if you'd done that years ago, we wouldn't be here now. Silence. Then click. They hung up. Progress. The next day, Marcus called. Your sister and her boyfriend came in, he said, clearly amused. Quite the show. I bet. Let me guess. Tears? Screaming? Threats to call the cops? All of the above. He chuckled. But the boyfriend pulled me aside and asked how much it would take to make this go away immediately. I nearly dropped my phone. Seriously? Yep. He seemed very concerned about her credit score. Almost like he was planning something that required good credit. I smirked. And I told him a significant good faith payment would prove they were serious about resolving the debt. He wrote a check for $5,000 on the spot. I burst out laughing. He what? Yep, and they signed a payment plan for the rest. $500 a month until it's paid off. Congrats. After our fee, you'll be getting about $350 a month. I hung up and literally did a victory dance around my living room. Best investment in a debt collector ever. Zara's social media went eerily silent after that. No more posts about toxic family members. No more woe is me narratives. Just radio silence. A week later, the first payment hit my account. I immediately used it to finally fix my car's AC, the one that had been broken for 2 summers. The following month, I managed to pay off one of my credit cards. A month later, I finally opened a savings account. My parents were still icing me out, convinced I had committed some kind of unforgivable betrayal against the sacred bond of family. Uncle Wade, on the other hand, found the whole thing hilarious. They'll come around, he said during one of our fishing trips. Or they won't. Either way, at least you're not broke anymore. But the absolute best part? For the first time in 5 years, I could walk into the grocery store and buy good coffee without mentally calculating how many of Zara's bills that money could have covered. Freedom tastes like premium dark roast. And it's glorious. Since a lot of people have been asking, yes, hiring a debt collector is completely legal if you have the right documentation proving the money was a loan and not a gift. In most states, text messages where someone admits it was a loan and promises to repay are legally enforceable. Do your research and save your receipts, people. Thanks for all the support and comments. It's nice to know I'm not alone in dealing with a financially draining relative. And a special shout out to Uncle Wade for coming up with the debt collector plan. Sometimes family helps in the way you actually need, not just the way they want.